I'm 17 years old, a high school senior, 101 pounds soaking wet. I haven't played sports in 4 years, yet I'm standing in front of 3 Army sergeants at a recruiting station in Miami. And they ask me, "What do you want to do?" I want to join the Army band. They laughed too. But one of the sergeants agreed to work with me to arrange an audition. His name was Sergeant Kyle Fleener, a sergeant with a heart of gold from Tennessee. That audition involved my very first airplane ride, and on the way back, something didn't feel right. Waiting for me was Sergeant Fleener, and something just didn't feel right. I said to him, "Sergeant Fleener, I'm not going to join the band. I'm not going to do it. But I really like flying on that plane. I'd like to jump out of planes and be the best trained medic in the Army." He looked at me and he said, "Young man, you've described an Army Special Forces soldier. I don't want to be a military policeman. No. Special Forces is the Green Berets." He handed me a brochure. "These men look like superheroes. I can't do that." He looked me dead in the eyes and he said, "Yes, you can." And I believed him. There's just one hitch. In order to become a Green Beret, you have to weigh 103 pounds and get a doctor's waiver. Otherwise, when you jump out of planes, you'll hit the side. So with a diet heavy on milkshakes, I surpassed that 103-pound goal, got up to a whopping 114, joined active duty, still 17 years old. Everywhere I looked and everywhere I went, I had drill sergeants and friends telling me I would fail. And of course, I had no idea what I had signed up for. The training to become a Green Beret was grueling. The hardest part for me was the Rucksack Marches. Now, a rucksack is a backpack, and a march is actually a speed walk with heavy objects over long distances. My usual rucksack weighed the equivalent of 5 bowling balls, which for me meant about half my body weight. The march made it feel like someone had a blowtorch on my shins. Just when you thought one of these marches was over, you could see the lights of the compound. You're coming through the gate, and the cadre would march you right out the other side through another set of gates. You had no idea if you're going an extra 5 minutes or an extra 5 miles. And that was the point. When people no longer know when the pain and suffering is going to end, they tend to drop like flies, never to become Green Berets. I just knew that pain is temporary, but quitting's forever. The adversity, the difficulty was teaching me something about myself. The people who quit failed to realize that suffering, as Carl Jung said, is part of being human. Nothing worth achieving is ever easy and always requires some degree of discomfort and sacrifice and self-discipline. That ordeal forever changed my perspective on resiliency and changed my internal dialogue. It helped me understand the power of persistence and determination, what's commonly known as grit. This insight came about because I faced a real test, a crucible that I endured to earn my Green Beret. Now, a crucible is a ceramic container in which metals are melted and forged into something stronger. It also describes a severe test in which people are shaped into something indomitable. It's a trial that breaks you down and changes your story because you emerge more durable and more resourceful. When you create your own crucible, you change your narrative. Why should we care about changing our narrative? Because when we're too comfortable, we don't stretch ourselves. We don't take risks, we don't innovate, we don't align our goals with our values to make a difference in the lives of others. Now, a narrative turns an event into information and knowledge and is responsible for how we perceive our own story. We cannot wait nor depend on institutions to fully prepare us for what lies ahead. The responsibility does not belong to family, friends, school, work, or the government. Our obligation for future impact is our personal responsibility. We can initiate and design our own crucible, which could be starting a social enterprise. It could be learning a language, taking a gap year, or turning that side hustle into your full-time gig. We are the authors of our own lives, but we have to know what kind of lives we want to write. This requires deep introspection and is the opportunity to pressure test yourself. We can all recall those tough times and how they tempered, hardened, and strengthened us as we faced adversity head on. Those tough times can be physical, mental, or emotional. I lead expeditions with executives and military veterans all over the world. They're harsh tests intended to push people from their comfort zone so they can reflect and focus on what's next. Now, picture Patagonia, the iconic mountainscape with Mount Fitzroy towering above ancient glaciers and rocky moraine. You're part of a 12-person team standing on a glacier. The wind is really whipping. It's mostly cold, but sometimes it's baking hot with the glaring sun and all the gear. You're in snowshoes, you're roped in, you're hiking in a trance-like cadence across a glacier that seems to go on as far as the eye can see. We have 50 more miles to go. The only sign of life in a week has been a single bumblebee that buzzed down the line. All of a sudden from the front we hear, "We're at the Poner! We're at the Poner! The point of no return!" Got it. 3 days that way, 3 days if we turn around, it's too windy for choppers. What it really means is if anyone gets sick or injured on that glacier, the evacuation would be arduous to say the least. And that's when it hits us. Our personal goals may not be heroic enough. We discussed it and it was unanimous. We all need poners, a no coming back commitment like quitting that job you hate with no backup plan. It was the realization that when we push ourselves to the limit, it changes us and we can actually edit our own narrative. For this particular expedition, we conducted a behavioral analysis before the trip and a year later because we wanted to see what would happen when people were a little bit cold, wet, tired, and uncomfortable. Did it change perspectives on resiliency? And what we found was fascinating, and this is a big deal. Right away, participants started to see the world and their duty in it through a different lens. Their drive for success and their willingness to overcome obstacles changed significantly, and it persisted. In fact, right away, participants started to focus on work that had more purpose and meaning. Now, if an experience like this can provide the boost veterans need to make a powerful transition to civilian life, think about how creating your own crucible can reveal a new path forward. Now, another one of those tough times was a mental one. When I started my own business, after years on the hamster wheel, I decided to take a solo hike on a remote section of the Colorado Trail to really focus on my business. The hike was tough. I saw 9 people in a week, and most of the 20-mile days I spent really just thinking about where I was going to put one foot after the other on the rocky terrain, looking at what seemed like an endless series of mountains. I journaled every evening, and when I returned home, I handed that journal to my wife in utter frustration. The journal hardly reflected anything about my business, yet it revealed my purpose in a very unique way. It was all about how selfish I felt. It was all about how much I missed my wife. It was a love story. This solitude allowed me to hear the unheard, which was what I needed to do. Creating my own crucible allowed me to align the business with my values. and helped me understand that competing values is what makes forward progress challenging and decision-making difficult. What do you need to start doing, and more importantly, stop doing to hear the unheard? Now, there's always a lesson to learn if we're intentional about finding them, and one of my toughest times was also one of the most emotional. When we dropped our son off at the United States Military Academy at West Point, the priest thanked the parents for giving their sons and daughters to their country in a time of war. Shortly thereafter, 1,000 new cadets were marched through these 2 huge doors. The same threshold that Patton and MacArthur and Eisenhower had crossed. And I thought, holy cow, in 4 years when my son comes back through those doors, he will have transformed from a boy to a man, from a cadet to an Army officer. In 4 years, how is my life going to be different or the same? What sort of environment must I create for myself to realize transformational growth? So I took a page from the military's process for reflection, the after-action review. What shall I sustain? What shall I improve? Based on what I've learned, what changes are needed? And this exercise helped me take an inventory of my priorities and understand I needed to slow down to speed up. When you think about your own goals over the next 4 years, what will be the catalyst for your unwavering focus? Creating your own crucible, there are really 3 ways to change your narrative. It's about knowing which questions to ask, having the courage to answer them, and the audacity to act. First, ask. For your own Poner, are you choosing to play big ball or small ball? Your point of no return means there's no turning back, and when your goals are aligned with what you hold dear, quitting isn't an option. Answer. Just like the solitude of the Colorado Trail, it's about hearing the unheard to overcome your own negative self-talk. Do you have clarity when it comes to your own aspirations? Act. Just like those doors at West Point represent passageways, not endpoints, so must our own path. As you journey forward, what's needed to muster the courage to move beyond the status quo, to turn your aspirations into action? Now, this isn't about singing Kumbaya and navel-gazing. The shift is to move from knowing all the answers to having the best questions. You can stretch yourself without climbing a glacier, and you can create commitment without traveling afar. It's about cultivating your grit to face the real possibility of failure and the awareness to know the product of adversity is pressurized grace. 18th century moralist Vavarnik said, "He who knows how to suffer everything can dare everything." The real hero goes the distance with grace and daring and still has plenty to give. Positioning yourself for failure is not normal. Yet we have a solemn duty, yes, a duty, to step back and face our own hypocrisy regarding how we define our limitations. If you're willing and you decide to leave your zone of comfort, you can write that book. You can run for office. You can start a movement. Yes, you can create your own crucible, and you actually must, because it's the only way to reframe your life story and affect real change for all of us. Thank you. Thanks.